This presentation is a follow-on from a previous presentation, Truth, Faith and Choices, When to Decide, in which I argued that faith can be thought of as a bridge between our uncertainty and our conviction. We can learn as much as we can, but as life compels us forward, we must still stake our convictions on things, even if there is some possibility of doubt. Yet, Christians will point out that, for them, faith is not defined by uncertainty, but that faith is knowledge, certain and secure knowledge that we can have in God. That's also true. And so, now I'd like to explain how both of these models come together. In the previous presentation, I explained that we could think of faith, truth, and conviction by thinking of a spectrum, with conviction on one end and a willingness to act, that is to say, a willingness to live by something, on the other. Now, we try to fill up our conviction with learning, and what we should really be doing is filling our convictions with truth. The more we understand truth, the more uncertainty we can dispel, and the more firm our convictions can become. We also said that most beliefs leave some room for doubt, despite our learning, and that some beliefs practically leave no room for doubt whatsoever. 2 + 2 = 4, for example. Although what is very important to note is that our model is not a model of fact, but a model of belief. And whilst it is impossible for 2 + 2 = 4 to be false, it is possible to doubt it. As absurd as it may sound, some people do doubt that 2 + 2 = 4. They will withhold acceptance and either deny it directly or deny what it entails. But if that really does sound too absurd, let's try another claim. Objective truth exists. This is another claim that people might doubt. Indeed, doubting it is in vogue today. Yet, it's self-evidently true. As certainly true as 2 + 2 = 4. How do we know? Because to deny it is to already affirm it. To some, it's not obvious at first, but to say that objective, universal truth does not exist is to say that the only kinds of truths are non-objective, non-universal, only subjective or relative. But then, if it is universally true that there is no objective truth, then it's objectively true that truth is not objective. And so, objective truth must exist. Hence, this is as logically certain as 2 + 2 = 4, even if it might take a few extra steps to explain. And so, many people can doubt a certain truth. In fact, such people would still exercise a faith in this same truth that they deny, because they will nonetheless proceed through life acting as if all kinds of things are objective, because there is an important difference between faith and hypocrisy. But why does this matter? It matters because it brings us back to the point, again, that faith is a choice. It's a choice that comes not just from the fact of doubt, but even the very possibility of doubt and denial. It is to look at a belief and say, I could still deny this. I could reject it. I could find ways to throw it into question, but I'm going to believe it anyway. And so, faith is a choice and a bridge between our possible doubts and our convictions. But why, then, is Christian faith regarded as a kind of knowledge? Because in this model, the more knowledge we gain, the less reasonable grounds we have for doubt. We could say, for example, that there are some truths which are so clear that they dispel pretty much all reasonable doubt, and the only thing you have left is faith. Faith that either holds out against the belief, or faith that ultimately accepts it. Now, at that point, to say that your belief is completed by faith or completed by knowledge are tantamount to the same thing. The truth is so certain that you should accept knowledge of it, and you should place your faith in it. 2 + 2 = 4 is one such example. So then, let's apply this to the Christian faith. We might imagine someone who is unsure about it. Perhaps they are in the process of conversion. Perhaps, for example, they are still doubting the claim that God exists. It is worth noting that God exists can be on the same level of certainty as 2 plus 2 equals 4, but even if we leave that argument aside for the moment, we can just consider a man who is doubting the existence of God. Whilst he has these doubts and lacks faith, he of course withholds his commitment and also doubts other beliefs that are connected to this central idea. Now, what happens later when the man is finally convinced of the claim that God exists? Well, once this is established, once you are convinced that the existence of God is true, there are certain other truths that follow directly from it. For example, you know that, being God, he is perfect. You know that he is infinite, eternal, transcendent. You know that he is all-loving, all-powerful, and all-knowing. And then, if you know that God is both perfect and all-knowing, it follows directly and certainly that everything he determines is absolutely true. Therefore, once you believe that God himself absolutely exists and is true, it then follows that every belief that comes from God is absolutely true. To say otherwise would be to call God imperfect and a liar. It's not just about doing a personal insult to him, but it's simply illogical. What, then, is the role of faith here? Well, it's playing the same role that we mentioned before. Once you have established that God exists, all beliefs that come from God are like 2 plus 2 equals 4. Knowing them and having faith in them become one and the same thing. The certainty of the beliefs is so secure that you must know them, and the knowledge of them is so secure that you must have faith in them. Or at least you ought to have faith in them if you are to be consistent with your own beliefs. And this security, this certainty, all comes from that first firm belief. God exists. He is who he is. Now, of course, most people would point out that we can doubt whether or not God really has determined something to be true or not. After all, don't all kinds of groups who call themselves Christian constantly argue about what God's truth really is? Yes, they do. But for now, I will just speak to the Catholic answer to this question. You see, even if we admit this question, we could still agree that if a truth comes from God, that truth must certainly be believed. The only question then becomes, how do we know which ones come from him? Well, let's dance with a few hypotheticals. What if there were strong reasons to believe that, whilst other groups and religions had different ways to interpret God, this religion had the power to interpret him directly? What if there were signs or certain marks that indicated that this group was able to determine the truths and will of God, not by working outside of God's influence, but by being positively and directly guided by it? What if there were indications that people of this group, not in every instance of every member, but in certain special cases, with certain special criteria and authority, had some special God-given rule for determining and expressing his truth? And what if there were particular signs that the truths this religion expressed indeed had the marks of divine assistance? For example, by remaining universal and consistent for 2,000 years. Well then, if these things were all true, then there might well be firm grounds for conviction that God exists and that this religion, apart from all others, is the one that clearly and uniquely expresses God's truth. And if that were true, then any claims this religion made upon this same authority would be worthy of the very same faith as any of the other truths connected to God. Hence, as we have said, for a believer in God, the faith and the knowing are one and the same thing. And for a Catholic, faith in God and faith in the Catholic Church are one and the same thing. Of course, for many of you, all of this floats upon a very big if. Understandably so. But our present goal was not to give full proofs of either God or the Catholic religion, only to understand the idea of faith. The point to take away here is that the faith we have discussed is still not a blind faith. A man may use his discernment to figure out that God exists and which is his religion, but he can still then have faith and knowledge in many beliefs that follow. even if he doesn't reason about each one individually. Yet that doesn't mean the entire thing is irrational. No, the entire thing is built upon reason. Reason serves as the foundation upon which this great palace of conviction might be built. And so, that explains the nature of Christian faith. Hopefully that has been helpful, and you can now see how that fits the model of faith more broadly. Another thing to discuss is that if faith itself is in our foundations, what are the deepest kinds of foundations we can build upon? If anyone would like to learn with me, there is the TVC Academy, where I offer courses and private lessons on reasoning, language skills, and more. And there is also TonyVCLow.com, where you can see my public profile, blog, books, and other works. For updates on my activity, you also have the option to subscribe to my mailing list. Thank you for your time.